So the Revelating Hour with me and T. I'm Michael Arevna, and T. We're co-hosting this hour. We're going to be bringing you deeper insight and information to the true path, so you can open up your mind, seek the right information, empower yourself, and apply it to your life for spiritual growth. And we both believe in raising the collective spiritual consciousness. So, without further ado, this is T. T, you want to give him a little bit about your background before I tell him about my background?
Um, just a seeker on the path. That pretty much sums it up.
Well, I wanted to give people a little more background on you. Like, you've actually studied Hebrew.
Yeah.
I actually remember you. I'll never forget that Hebrew song that you know. It was just like, to me, that was just amazing because I don't speak or sing Hebrew. So I don't know. I just think that people need to understand that you've gone a little deeper into things. You've studied, the Bible, lost books of the Bible, so much. I mean, I can't. I don't know. I just want to make sure that the people that don't know you get a understanding of your background and the breadth of knowledge that you have on so many different esoteric disciplines.
Well, my journey starts pretty much like anyone. You have questions, and you go out and you seek. And for me, it was to start at the beginning, to learn the language that the scriptures were written in, and then go from there to find out what was missing, what was its original interpretation. And that's easier said than done, because there's always going to be debates about translations. But it was about starting at the beginning and walking my way to the present, and not making scripture about a 2,000-year thing and making it more about a now thing for me. How does it apply in my life now? How does it move mankind forward now? And so that was my journey. And I had to look a lot of places to get simple answers. So that's where I am.
Yeah, we all have different paths and different experiences that get us there. I mean, a lot of people fell away from spiritual teachings and just became materialized and chased pleasure and superficial things as well. And then they came back to the path. But I've found now that everything is just so convoluted. The teachings, missing books in the Bible, things like that, like the fact that the Vatican has like allegedly, 50 miles of ancient scrolls that they've never released to the public, and there's information in there that I think that's just like from that movie, Star Wars, when Anakin finally became Darth Vader. Qui Gon had teachings about how to survive in the afterlife if you were struck down physically, and I think that there's something out there like that. I think that there are some things going on, like you brought to my attention before, where information is just going to come to you, and and be sent to you, like you say, like pulling it out of the ether. So that's a good thing because I think the Most High knew that the information was going to be suppressed. So I do think that He sends insights and information to people, and then you later on get it confirmed through synchronicity.
Well, that's true, because when we go searching, a lot of times we get sidetracked by the mindset in which we search under, you know. And so if you're searching for truth, then truth is what you seek. If you're searching to fit inside a particular religious formula, whether it be denominational, cultural, or whatever, then that is the mindset in which you follow the path. And that's a dangerous path because within it, you develop prejudices. And this isn't a place to be prejudiced. This is a place to seek knowledge that you hope you can turn into wisdom, and things that move you forward in your spiritual and your personal life. Because it's an ongoing process. As soon as you reach one level, there's another level behind that. The deeper you go, the deeper it gets. And so we have people out there who study and they create a religion around a particular truth without going deeper. And then they try to make all truth fit within this little chunk that they have taken out. And I've found that you cannot do that. It's impossible to grow spiritually and do that. It's impossible to grow and create or obtain a Christ-like lifestyle. People are so quick to call themselves Christian without following Christ, without following that model, without getting that understanding, without obtaining any power whatsoever in their life. And as we talk many a times, people are always quoting apostles and disciples. Well, as I said many times, their initial walk was initiation. They didn't just have it, and they didn't have it by the time Christ moved on, transitioned on. They had to work and obtain it. And if they dealt personally with Christ and their journey was that way, how do we think we're just going to get it because we read a scripture or something they said? It's more than the words. It becomes an action. It takes on a life of itself within the individual. And so we learn or we attempt to learn without how do I want to put it, without properly setting a course, and that's what I've always tried to do. I didn't want to be biased or prejudiced. All I wanted was the truth.
Well, there's no like clear path laid out for people. It's very it's all over the place with the different denominations, and then the prosperity gospels that are gaining momentum because people want money. But there's no clear cut path ever laid out, and I find that just comes from actually researching and like studying the life of Christ, where he said, "Follow my ways," and that's a very it's just a very profound statement right there. He just said, "Follow my ways." So we're supposed to be like the disciples should have been watching his everything that he did, from the time he ate, what kind of food he ate, what times he meditated, what times he would pray. And there's some things like that captured in some other ancient scripts, but we don't really get that in the church. It's just a very the church has some these churches, there's some really good churches. There's some very good community oriented churches. There's some good people out there for sure, and their hearts are in the right place. It's just it's very hard getting over that obstacle of misinformation or suppression of information.
True. Well, you used the same way it says follow my way. And that way is there's a lot of different steps. There's a lot of different steps that in the development or the life of Christ. You know, Christ came as the ultimate demonstration model of how man should operate in this dimension. And I don't think he came to be worshipped as much as he came to instruct. And so Christ spoke about how we think, how we act, how we react. And then he later went on to develop power. He taught the disciples how to heal. Peter walking on water, how to manifest different things. All these things were demonstrations of what power you would have. That's why he says, greater things that you may do. But to understand the way, you really have to develop. We live in a microwave society, and always everyone thinks that they have the right to tell someone else how and what it should be done. And if we had that, if whatever religion, culture, or denomination had it right, then we would, in the 2,000 plus years, we would have achieved peace on earth. But because we don't, because we only deal with theory, we only deal with, and people go their lifetime only dealing with the theory of Christ, of God, of whatever premise that they place on their spiritual life. And they only deal with the theory aspect of it. And they never go into the knowing. And everyone claims they have spiritual growth and experiences without ever acquiring certain attributes that's conducive for spiritual. Because people, first of all, you must first know the whole of your human experience of what you are as a human being and the different levels, aspects, mindsets of a human being. Before you can move into all these other things, you must know how you work. And then you learn how life works. And then we attribute so many things as humans. Has to move forward on a lot of different planes. So many times we operate on one plane with theories. Someone will beat you over the head with what Peter said, what Paul said, what this. But they never look at the spiritual aspect of the scripture. And so it's very important that to grow, to be a true seeker or to truly be considered a Christian or a follower of Christ. It's more than being about believing what he said. you have to take on the same attributes, you know. And the being born again thing is first a backward process, and then it's a forward process. You have to go into yourself to purge yourself, and then this just as birth decides.
Well, what are you purging yourself of?
Pardon me?
I said, what are you purging yourself of?
Well, as they say, in sin we're born. And that's because every person that's born, it isn't the act that is sinful that brought us here. It is the fact that we come with the DNA of generations of our mothers, of our father, of our father's father and mother, our mother's father and mother, and so on and so on. And we bring characteristics and traits and misdeeds and bad habits, as well as good habits, of those that we never even met before. And so as we come into the world, and then you're brought up in a particular household to think and believe a certain way, a lot of that has to be undone. A lot of that has to be undone. And you have to go back to a birth state, because it was the only time that you were existing in pure consciousness, you know. And then you have to walk yourself back into this world free of all of the nastiness that was embedded in you by your ancestors. You know, people can be born with an alcoholic gene and they never took a drink, but it's somewhere in their history. People could be born with a mean spirit that's nowhere, that they haven't met the first person, but because of that. So we all have things that we have to shed. And then you add on top the things that we accumulate for ourselves. We have to purge ourselves from that, because only from that state can we begin to move forward. Because if I move forward and I take all my prejudice with me, cultural prejudices, racial prejudices, religious prejudices, all these different aspects of life that I take with me, then these things are now cell blocks that keeps me jailed and walled off from truth. Because I would then try to make every truth fit inside of these mental jail blocks that I have created in my life. Everything has to fit. And there is no, if you look at the Bible from Genesis all the way to the end, everyone had to be born again in a spiritual sense. Abraham had to be removed from his family to start anew. Moses had to be removed from the side of Pharaoh and be born anew. Jacob, everyone, it is a process. And we look at scripture and we see stories, but we don't see these same stories are a part of our internal life. Every story in the Bible is happening within each individual. There is a battle going on in each individual. Each individual has to deal with some aspect of Scripture all the way through.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is there needs to be a high degree of introspection for each individual based on the spiritual principles, especially how everything falls under love. And I think that's one of the hardest things to do is to actually love the way the Bible, the way Corinthians talks about love, because that is truly like the purest form of love without any type of insecurities mixed up in it as well. And I think that when people start to do that and look at themselves and then begin to feel for others, I mean, you're really talking about a high degree of not just sympathy, but empathy pouring through your heart for others and for life, and to see somebody down hurts you no matter what their race is. You know, we have so many commonalities between us all, and we're so alike. I mean, even on your biggest enemy has a family who, you know, they love and they're loved by them and everything, but we seem to forget that we share these same dynamics, and we've been set up to stay in a state of conflict, which turns into a distraction. And then it's very hard for you to stay on task and do this because you're so caught up in on the external things that are going on. All the work has to be done inside, and you're actually talking about by educating your mind on these spiritual truths, you're actually rewiring your heart. And I think that's going to be, you know, something that people are going to have to realize, because there are a lot of people that are still have, you know, a lot of prejudices, a lot of racist views that claim that they're following the teachings of Christ. And that's not something that, you know, he was about at all. We're all included in his kingdom now. And we should be happy that we have that, you know, offer, that insurance policy, that we can, you know, we can even do that. I still feel like a child in many ways on my spiritual development, because it's something that you can't really tangibly see. It's something that you just know it's there. You accept it as truth, and it becomes like a feeling of truth as well, like in your gut. So I would say, like, for me, my journey was probably not unlike anybody else's. I mean, there was a time where I was like separated from the faith, and I just lost myself in like the wrong crowd, materialism, things like that. And it's like something is wired inside some people, I believe, that they just get pulled back in. And that introspection phase was, I tell people I've been through like 3 egos already, and I'm on my 4th ego now. So you have to be ready to really erase your ego and sacrifice yourself for the path.
That is 100%. That's why Christ said, "Let ye without sin cast the first stone." It's because there's so much work that has to be done within yourself that there's no possible way you can criticize another individual. And as we move up the spiritual ladder, you begin to find out the higher you go, the less conflict you seek, and the lower you are in the spectrum of your spiritual walk. It's laden with conflict. You have a conflict with everything. You see, the Pharisees and Sadducees were full of conflict, and they thought that they were the most righteous people on the planet. They thought they were doing law by the letter, but that very thing had enslaved them. Because if you don't understand that there's different dimensions of of your spiritual growth. And law alone, that's why Christ said I came to fulfill law, because law alone without application is nothing. So now it begins to turn on you. Anytime you cannot progress to the next level, it's eventually going to turn inward on you. And all that you were working for positive starts to have a negative effect, because there are natural laws within the realm of the Creator, and they cannot be broken. They cannot. They are immutable. That's why he's able to say my word will never change. And the world was created with the word. So these laws was his word. So anything and everything that goes on operates within these laws. You know? And so it takes a lot to even just understand and harmonize yourself within those aspects. And that's what Christ was trying to show. The Sadducees and Pharisees, they were so into the theory of God, and they were going through these dead acts and these dead works, yet they had no spiritual insight. They became just because they had these instructions from God, because they were operating within the Ten Commandments, they didn't have any spiritual insight that would lead them past the instruction. It's like going through life with no common sense. Then you have no sense at all. Because common sense is the basis. You know, so it's very difficult to explain to people these things who haven't attained a certain understanding of life. Because the higher I go, the more, or should I say, the less I find that I can criticize my fellow man for. Because I began to see myself in everything or in everybody. My dad used to say, you got to be careful what you say and do, because you talk about somebody one day and you never know when your condition will be like theirs. One day you're going to have money, one day you're not. One day you're going to be the poorest person in the room, one day you're going to be the richest. One day you're going to be the best looking person, one day you're going to be the ugliest. It doesn't matter. It's all